Back working again! Yeah, man. Been a long, cold winter. Glad to be back doing this.
So we've just come down the swinge now. We're going to go head around the corner, go into the race, do some wreck diving there. Can't wait. It's like bees around a honey pot. So one of our plans to do when we're up Alderney is actually have a look for some new shipwrecks, or just check out the ones we already know of.
Ain't looking very good. No. Between these two crosses here. Just about to go between the two. The wreck should be here. Showing 25 metres, 26 metres. Very sandy. Might be the odd bit of wreckage sticking out, but not enough for you guys to fondle around. Plan C. So here's the wreck. This is us. A little loop round. And we should have a wreck. Looking a little bit bluer. Yeah. Something coming up on the sounder. 46 metres. Glad I'm not diving today. There she goes.
Very wreckish.
Deep and dark. Get the rods out, Ted. See if there's a pollock. Do you want me to? Yeah, that's fine.
Get down, boy.
Right, I'm going to take the boat out of gear and we'll just see what the drift is. Have your first feeler.
Yep.
Another one to tick off.
Hopefully. What's it called?
The water's a little bit clearer here, but I don't know if I'd do 46 metres today.
Here's Cachaliere Pier. They used to load the granite onto boats. I've never actually seen it from the sea. So the pier used to come out here, and the little carriages and trains and stuff used to come and load the boats. Not quite sure how far it came out. You can see the little plateau all the way around there. See a little German bunker up there, look. Messrs. Rowe and Mitchell are the owners of a large quantity of freehold quarry land at Cachaliere on the south side of Alderney, and nearly 6 years ago, 1903, they commenced the erection of a concrete pier so that they could quarry and ship the granite at Cachaliere without having to transport it across the island to BRAYE harbour. The concrete portions of the work is of great strength, the bins for the broken granite having a storage capacity of 5,000 tonnes. The floor of these bins are constructed of concrete and steel, and about 1,500 tonnes of Portland cement have been used for making the concrete for these works. In order to provide room for the engine and braking machinery, a concrete wall was erected across the bay. The wall is about 180 feet long and 10 feet thick at the bottom. Inside this wall, and just above the level of the high water spring tides, are the machinery pit and the engine house. The former contains spooling machines, manganese rollers and screens capable of braking, elevating and screening 500 tonnes of granite per day. And this plant is operated by a 320 brake horsepower, 3-cylinder vertical Tangy gas engine. The foundations of the storage bins and on the shoreward end of the pier are constructed with solid concrete walls of 10 to 12 feet thick, strengthened with steel rods, while the outer portion of the pier, may be seen in the illustration, is built with columns and a strong decking overall. Briefly, the method of construction is as follows. The shells of the columns were cast in Portland cement concrete, strengthened with expanded metal. These shells, after being thoroughly set, were placed in position by divers on a properly prepared concrete base, and after 2 rolled steel joists had been erected inside the shells, the whole of the interior was filled with concrete. At intervals, there were longitudinal and transverse beams and braces, and all of these are bolted to each other and also to the vertical joists in the column. The result is a steel pier absolutely encased in concrete. The columns are 6 foot in diameter at the top, increasing to 8 foot diameter at the base in the case of the outermost sets. The decking consists of steel joists and concrete and is strong enough to carry anything that is placed upon it. The method of shipping the granite is also new and ingenious. The granite runs out of the storage bins into the colliery tubs, and these run on a narrow gauge railway to the end of the pier, where they pass into a colliery tippler, which makes a rapid revolution, thus throwing the granite into the chute, which lead to the steamer's hold. The empty tub is then taken up a creeper and gravitates back to the storage bins to be reloaded. At present, vessels can be loaded at the rate of 200 tonnes per hour, but it is hoped to do better than this later on. This is us just getting ready to dive a shipwreck called the Point Law. And she was lost on Le Puy-Chevet rocks on the south coast of Alderney. She was 1,529 tonnes, 76 metres long and 12.5 metres wide. Built in 1967 at Hall & Russell & Co Limited, Aberdeen. She was launched on the 20th of September 1967, and at the time she was en route St Sampson's back to the Isle of Grain. So this is a shallow dive, no more than 12 metres, and it's about 5 metres near the engine. As you can see, the visibility isn't that good, and there's a very fine sand on the rocks everywhere, so as soon as you touch it, it all puffs up again and you lose visibility. As soon as we hit the bottom, we'd start to see old metal. It's very rotten. And this is one of the ship's bollards where they tied the mooring ropes on. And this is some very deformed bits of sheet plating, which isn't surprising really, because when it's a bad bit of weather in here, it really does roll up into the bay. She was lost after she run ashore in the dark. And it was lucky for the Channel Islanders that she was actually in ballast when she went aground. This shipwreck was bought by a local diver, which just happens to be our captain, Mr. Richard Keane, and he bought this tanker to break up for scrap. So he started stripping off all the non-ferrous materials and metals and machinery. Richard set up a limited liability company and also kept some detergent up on the cliffs just in case there was some oil or fuel left in its pipes. Mr. Keane then had to employ some trawlers, some fishing boats, to come in and pick up all the scrap metal directly from the beach and take it back. It was nigh on impossible to get the materials back up the cliffs. The tanker was owned by Shell, Mex and BP, which was a joint venture, and it was used to carry fuel oil between the Isle of Grain and the Channel Islands. And the Point Law in 1973 was bringing in the largest consignment of petrol ever delivered in one shipment to St Sampson's Harbour at 220,000 gallons of fuel, and the previous usual amount was 63,000 gallons. Fuel suppliers CI Limited had to gamble and nearly run out of fuel, as all the storage was needed to deal with this bulk consignment, and matters did look quite serious when the tanker was delayed by gales, but it arrived on time and continued as normal supplies to the consumers. So now we're just starting to get into the debris field now, and we've come from the stern area heading forward on the ship. Not quite sure what that is. Some sort of round piece. This is a bit of the Point Law bow up on the beach. You can see some shiny bits of aluminium. I'm not quite sure what this is. I think it's a cylinder head. It was a two-stroke engine, and I think that hole in the middle was the injector. Now we're coming up to just the stern of the engines, really. You can hear Paul shouting for me to get me to come and have a look at something. And it's just a little bit of copper cable wrapped up inside a drum. That's under a humongous rock. You'd never move that. Actually looks bigger than it actually is. In real life it didn't look that big. And now we're coming up to what I think could be a prop shaft of some sort. This seems to go into the back of a flywheel. More debris and cogs and splines and bits and bobs. Bit of a jumble sale of a wreck. And now I think I'm underneath the bottom of the engine here. And you can see there's divers in front of me. They've kicked up loads of silt with their fins. Rototilled the rocks. Kicked up all the sand in my face. Some small bits of copper and brass just kicking around. So it looks like there's some more shiny bits. But there's no way you're going to move them. Well and truly buried. I'll pick up like a little electrical ground of some sort. Now I've just come up now, and you can see the ground heave because we're so shallow now. We're only about 5-6 meters of water now. Just take a look to my left. I see Paul on my left and Molly on my right. I'm trying to hold myself down so I don't get bowled all over the place. More little tiny bits of copper. Probably would have been cables for the engine. That looks like an oil line, that. Very thin gauge oil line. This looks some sort of port on the side of the engine block, or I should say on the bottom of the engine block. And there's boulders all over the top of it. More bits of metal, bits of sheet. I've swum down back past the flywheel now, and I'm on the what would have been my right hand side. You can see here these are cylinders. So this is the top of the engine. The engine's fallen to starboard. You can just work out this. I think there's 4 or 5 cylinders. There's the head nuts. I just poke my camera underneath, have a look at the engine. More bits and bobs that's completely rotted and smashed up. There's a humongous boulder on top of a bit of metal. See, just see the tops of the cylinders here. And that's the end of my dive.
No fish, Sally. No fish, no crabs, nothing.
Seen 1 or 2 rockfish, and that was about it. Covered in gannets.
You don't know where the gannets start and end?
Probably got about 4 foot wingspan, I reckon. Keeney's going to make a noise in a minute and they're going to all poo on us.
That's a lot of gannets.
Look, the sea is full of them. Maybe 5 minutes. Behind you, mate. He's gonna be raging with that. Fuming! Just see Matt emptying his pony bottle because he's got a free flow. Now we're on to our second wreck, which is the shipwreck of the Mjoluer, a Norwegian steamship which hit the East Barrow in the Swinge on the 26th of January 1909 in thick fog. She was coming down from North Shields to Naples with 3,000 tons of coal. So I was aware of this shipwreck, but I was unaware that it was still actually diveable. So when she went aground, for the first 3 days the weather was very fine and the sea was like a mill pond, and the officers and the larger portion of the crew actually stayed on board. The steam was got up and the pumps were set in motion to try and get her off of the reef. But on the Friday night, on the 29th of January 1909, the weather changed, and this actually threatened the aspect of trying to save the ship, and it forced all the hands ashore for the night, and they comfortably spent their night in the wooden forest mariners shelter, which I believe is the small house that's on Barrow. On the 30th of February, a steam tug called the Green Castle, Captain Anderson of Penzance, arrived and proceeded at once to the wreck, and another tug belonging to the same company as the salvaged the Ibex, which was a Great Western Railway steamer that went down. So the subsequent rough weather had lessened the prospect of saving the Mjoluer, and she then slipped into deeper water, and at the top of the flood of the tide she was submerged, with the exception of her mast and her funnel still sticking up. Besides the Penzance tug, the Green Castle, the Bailiwick, Captain Bayford, had also been on the scene, and the Bailiwick had left on the Tuesday evening for Southampton to fetch lighters for salvaging purposes. Local opinions at the time held that the vessel was too much in the grip of Barrow to be saved, and the effects of the gale strengthened the opinion. 14 Alderney workmen, besides the crew, had been employed to discharge the cargo from the forehold into the sea, and although the vessel's pumps were working, the hold filled with water as the ship lightened. So now I'm just trying to figure out what part of the shipwreck we're actually on. It's large side panels or deck with ribs. There's not very much sea life on this wreck either. Didn't see any fish, didn't see any crab or conger or spider crabs or anything like that. So when we went down, we were told there's only a prop shaft left, and we found a bit more than that. But the person that told us this had only dived it once himself. And you can see it's similar conditions here than what we'd just seen at the Point Law. Shallow, so there's loads of weed growth on it, and the water's very, very silty. As you can see, I'm pulling all the tego off of the wreck, just so we can get a better outline of it for filming. You can see I found something here, like a long shaft and something round, so I'm just trying to figure out what it actually is. So I can't figure it out. See, it's like that's a cog. It's a big cog on the top there. So I'm guessing it's probably some sort of deck winch or a windlass. This is Matt just going back up to the surface. He's just tied our line on. He's going back up to get his camera. Now we've found something. And these are the ribs I was referring to before. Pretty confident we're right up the bow. And these would have been the ribs that come up the side of the boat. That could have been the reinforced piece where the rob rail goes. The bottom left of the camera. And here's another interesting shape, object. Just trying to figure out what it is. Some deck plates, some more ribs. So Matt swam astern of this area to see if he could find any more wreckage, and there didn't seem to be any more. Albeit when we got back on the boat, Paul and Molly said they'd seen all sorts. Paul said he found an engine. And that's it, we're on our way back up now.
And then we swam, where did we go? We went west a bit, eh? And that's when we lost it all. So if we'd stayed up in that cove,
Yeah, Gleeson was over here.
yeah, if we'd have gone that way more.
He knows a lot, but he's not always right. It's really nice. He needs a stump. Yeah, I'll get it.
You alright through the boat on your own? Sure.
So we're back into port now, done the Point Law, scouted out a few other wrecks, and now we're back in the harbour. Back towards Guernsey. There's Firm, Jet 2, Saab. Big Bob! Yeah, thanks for the weekend, Richard.
Yeah, cheers. Cheers, Dan. Chucked all the weight belts and stuff, you know. Yeah, well, I just asked him. He said just come back and do it. He said, no, don't worry, I'll do it.
He's a seagull, eh?
Huh?
He's a seagull.
Matt?
Yeah.
Oh, he's just like throwing his weight around.
He's not even in charge. You're not even in charge of us. We're on dry land now.
Huh?
So you're not even in charge of us, we're on dry land now.
Not in charge, he's looking after you.
Oh yeah, he's our,
Can't well do as you're told.
he's our social carer.
Social worker.
Yeah, that's the one.
You're in charge, boys.
She's throaty, eh?